Another episode of Who Are You and What's Your Story? And today I am really excited to be speaking with Jennifer Ramirez, correct? I always check because I like to butcher names often. Who is a badass, really. That's why she's here, because I love interviewing people who align with soul-centered work, but also don't have a problem advocating and speaking their truth, which is why I love her. So Jennifer is an author, she's a coach, she's an entrepreneur, but what I really find interesting is that she is the creator of a Chicago-based nonprofit called Rise and Shine. Is that it?
And
I
rise.
wanna. What's that?
And rise.
Rise oh, okay. I'm making up shit. Anyway, that's the way it goes here. And Rise, which really spoke to me because it's about helping women really step into their authentic power and become who they already but don't know. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for being here and giving me grace as I butcher your nonprofit.
Thank you for having me. It's okay.
So I mean, there's so much to unpack here because you do a lot, right? You're an author, you're a speaker, you coach.
Right.
What was the catalyst to help you, or inspire you rather, to go into opening up a nonprofit to help other women?
Yeah. So at my last 9 to 5, it was interesting because I kept getting overlooked for raises and promotions, and they kept telling me, you're not ready yet, or we don't have, money in the budget to do that. And I was already doing the work, but they weren't paying me as much as my colleagues. And I just knew, I was like, I'm super smart. I don't understand why these people don't see my value. And then I started doing these women empowerment events out of my living room in 2019 just for fun. As soon as I started doing it, I knew like I love this. And how do I turn this into a job? How do I like pay the bills still by doing this, right? So I also, just to backtrack a little bit, started investing in real estate in my early 30s. So I actually sold one of my properties to live off that money to start And Rise. So I quit my job right before COVID, didn't know COVID was going to happen, just like the rest of us. And yeah, and we've been able to kind of like get it going and haven't really had to use a lot of that money, that I use like to kind of offset my cost of living and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of how it all started. And it's just mainly because I was like, I knew I just had something burning inside. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I was supposed to do, but I just knew I'm like, I have to take a risk on myself. I know I have so much potential. And I just know in my heart that there's something bigger for me than this 9 to 5. And now looking back, I know why I never got those raises and promotions, because if I would have gotten those, I would have just kept working my way up the corporate ladder and I never would have started And Rise. And I know that this is like God kind of put it in my lap for me because he's like, this is what you're supposed to do. And that's why I love it. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. So that's kind of how it all came about.
That's pretty incredible. So you knew to invest in real estate at a younger age. Talk to me about your path to kind of establishing yourself as a successful woman to get you to a place where you could even sell the property to start And Rise.
Yeah. So believe it or not, I was a super broke single mom once upon a time when as soon as I told my kid's dad I was pregnant, he took off. So I was literally on my own financially, mentally, emotionally, everything. I did everything for me and my kid, and we were very broke when she was young. And I lived in a really bad neighborhood in Chicago, shootings, drugs, gangs, like really, really bad. And that was kind of like a big pivot point in my life because I was like, how the hell did my life turn into this crap? Like I can't even go outside without these gangbangers bothering me, or I didn't feel safe walking around my own neighborhood. So I was just like, and then I was super broke and I was $25,000 in credit card debt because I didn't have that other parent to help me. So I would use credit cards. And back then I was very uneducated on money and how it worked. And I just thought credit card was a free money that some nice person gave you along the way. I didn't know about interest and how I was paying interest on interest on interest. I was paying the minimum. So I was like, why isn't my balance going down every month? Like I'm paying 250 every month and it just never goes down. And then that's when I started really like just teaching myself about money. And then in that, I started meeting different real estate friends, and then they started telling me about how they got into the business. And so I was like, huh. So I started purchasing real estate properties. Just like I purchased my first condo when I was 20, I don't know, 5 or 6 or something like that. And then I bought my second one a couple years later, and then I bought a third one. So like everybody's like, "Oh my God, how did you get all this money to do this?" And I'm like, "I didn't. I just you have to learn these loopholes that all these really rich people know about." So like I started just living in properties. We moved a lot, but when you live in a property, you only have to pay 5% down as opposed to 15% down as an investor. So that's how I started doing that. And yeah, and that's kind of what started my entrepreneurial journey, because I was like, if I could do this as a single mom, like by myself with my own money, like I know I can do other things. And then in that, I started a blog. And then because of the blog, that's kind of how And Rice started, because I started wanting to talk about my story and showing women, like, look, I came from nothing. I built this by myself. And I wanted to really share that with women, because I know at one point I felt completely hopeless, and I felt like I'm going to be poor forever. I'm never going to know what it's like to like live a comfortable life, or ever live without having to look at my bank account before going to spend something. You know what I mean? So like it was very life changing for me. And also, like, again, like I said, I never was taught about money growing up. We didn't talk about that type of stuff. So if somebody would have educated me, I probably maybe wouldn't have gotten into all that credit card debt, and I would have known how to invest sooner, and things like that. So yeah.
That's really incredible. Where do you think that resiliency and tenacity comes from?
I don't know.
Because many people, yeah, would find themselves in your circumstances and just kind of quit or give up or lose hope.
Yeah, I definitely lost hope. I'm not gonna lie, I did, but I just honestly, my daughter was my motivation to keep going. I was like, I gotta do better for her. I don't know what's gonna happen, but like I just wanted to show her like this is not it.
Yeah.
And then I started going back to college when she was 7 years old. I attempted it when she was little, but it was really hard. So I dropped out like twice. And then I remember when I was in my like, I don't know, getting my associate's degree, I was reading a psychology book out loud, because we didn't get to spend a ton of time together because I was always at work or at school. So she would just listen to me read my books out loud. And we were in this one section of my psychology book that was talking about different family dynamics, single parenthood being one of them. And it basically had all these negative statistics that if you're a single parent, your kids are going to more than likely be poor too, and they're not going to graduate college, and some of them are going to end up in jail. And then my daughter looked up at me and she's like, "Mom, that doesn't sound like us at all." And I was like, "That's right, baby. We are not going to be the statistic, because once you see those things, I mean, I understand why there's statistics out there, but once you see that and you're in this category, you start to be like, well, me and my kid aren't going to be anything, so I might as well stay here." And for me, it was the opposite. I was like, no, I'm going to beat the statistic and show that this is actually not true. But I think when you tell people that that's what you're supposed to be, then they believe it, and then they stick to that small little thing you're putting them into. So yeah, so that was something that I always remembered about, like, her saying like that wasn't us. And I'm like, I know, I'm glad that she was able to see it at a young age.
Yeah, something you said I align so deeply with, and I have such an issue, not just looking at statistics, but labels as well. Think about it.
Mm,
A Latina woman, a white woman, bipolar person, somebody who, anytime we create this label, and I like you, I understand why there's a need for it. And yet,
right.
too often, people attach themselves to that label, and rather than look at it as an opportunity to push themselves to rise above, they
Yeah.
use it as an excuse to settle and really not do anything meaningful, which is so detrimental to us as human beings, because we're meant for expansion and
Yes.
growth.
Yeah.
We're meant to go through hard things so that we can grow and learn just what we're capable of. Much like you said, you knew there was some part of you who knew that there's no way in hell. Like, I know I'm strong. I know I'm resilient. And it's interesting. I think back on my time in corporate America, and I, like you, have very similar experiences where people were being promoted ahead of me, and I never realized why. I chalked it up to education.
Yeah.
But in later in life, I realized it had little to do with education. It had everything to do with the fact that I was a woman, really, because it was
Hmm.
always men getting promoted
Yeah.
above me. But so talk to me. So you jump into this endeavor of a nonprofit, which I jumped into business myself 4 years ago. So I know that it is a ride. What was the experience like going from working for somebody else to then believing in yourself enough and diving headfirst into opening up this organization and Rise?
Yeah. I mean, it was scary, but like I said, I just had this burning desire inside of me. And I was like, I want to do this full time. And I had this great idea of doing all events, in-person events. We're going to do so many events. And then COVID happened. So I had to pivot. Literally, as soon as I started my business, I had to pivot right away and figure something else out. So actually, the first year, I didn't even focus on money because everybody was struggling through COVID, even though everybody had COVID money and things like that. I was just like, I feel like this year I need to just serve, 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 and I feel like everything else will be fine. Plus, there was very little cost. I wasn't really doing anything that year, so it was fine. But then the years after that, then I'm like, okay, now it's like everything's kind of going back to normal. I got to start focusing on like really building this business up. So yeah, I mean, ever since I've just been really focused on growing, and we have grown immensely in the last 3 years, and that's something I'm really proud of. We still don't have a lot of employees, but we have a good amount of volunteers, and we have, our support group facilitators that are 1099 contractors, and it's just going really, really well. I can't complain. It's a lot of work and a lot of time and effort, but I absolutely love it. That saying, like, if you do something you love, it doesn't feel like work, and that's how I feel all the time. And I always just am thanking God for like choosing me, because I do believe that He molded me into this person that I am today in order to do this work. And I honestly didn't even want to work with trauma and abuse survivors. I was very resistant at first. I did not want to do it because I hadn't really delved very deep into my own stuff. I had started working on things, but not deep, deep. So it kept coming up and it kept coming up, and I was like, nope, nope, nope. And then finally one day it just kind of dawned on me. All right, God, I hear you. I think I'm supposed to do this. And once I started doing it, I started taking all these trainings and all these courses about, trauma and abuse, sexual, domestic, all that stuff. And I learned so much. And in that, I started really delving into my own healing. I was like, oh my God, every romantic relationship I've been in has been toxic. Every friendship I've had has been toxic. Most of my family is toxic on both sides. And I'm just like, it was a very hard pill to swallow once I realized my whole life had been surrounded by toxicity. And now having to unlearn all those things that I grew up hearing and learning, and like retraining myself, or almost like raising myself into this like healthy thinking skills and all these different things that I was never taught. So a lot of great things have came out of this organization, not just like for other people, but for me personally as well. And I always tell the girls that I work with, I'm like, little do you know, you guys heal me so much in return. You guys think that I'm here to help you, but little do you guys know how much you do for me in return. So it's very rewarding, very awesome.
Well, they say healing happens in communion. That's why, God is present when there's two. Not that, whether you believe in God or whether it's energy, I tell people, I don't care if you believe in a purple dinosaur, whatever that is, it becomes exponentially more powerful when we're in communion with each other, because we're able to connect as one, which we really are.
Right.
So and Rise. So you've alluded to domestic violence, you've alluded to, sexual trauma and assault. What specifically is and Rise's mission, and how do you support women through these types of experiences?
Yeah, so our mission is to empower women to be the ultimate versions of themselves, no matter what adversities they face. So we offer free counseling for women in Illinois. We also offer 7 weekly support groups, one of them being in Chicago on Mondays, and the rest are all virtual. So we work with women nationwide through our support groups. We also offer financial education workshops. This year we only did it quarterly, but next year we're actually planning to do it every other month, because it's very much in demand. And that's something too that I really care about because I went through a lot of financial abuse, which people don't usually know that it's under the umbrella of domestic abuse, right? So like really, and also too, like my entrepreneurial journey, how did I grow my money? How did I invest? All these things, I wish that somebody would have taught me. And I think something that I'm really passionate about is teaching women how to become financially independent without a man. You can do it without a man, but I think society has always told us you can't have a house without a partner. You can't have a nice car unless you have two income, like, and that's absolutely not true. So anyway, so we do financial education. We also do career development. So we help with resumes and mock interviewing skills. And we do a ton of different events that teach women about healthy relationships, healthy coping skills, red flags. We do a lot of holistic healing. So like I do Reiki. I'm a Reiki master. So I work on Reiki with girls. I could do it distant Reiki, like, so it could be anywhere in the world, honestly, or it can be in person if you prefer. And then we do like sound bowl meditations and, art therapy and different things like that. So that's how we're helping women. And because we're virtual with a lot of the stuff we do, we work with women all over the country and even sometimes outside of the country as well.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I love the diversity in what you offer because, I work with people who struggle with trauma and addiction. And the reality is there's no one size fits all. And these
Mhm.
programs that say that if you follow this specific program or this regimen, you're gonna be freed from addiction or suffering or break free from your trauma. It's not reality because we're
Yeah,
all humans with different experiences, and what serves one person isn't going to serve another. So
exactly.
I think that's really, really powerful. So again, you kind of mentioned you've had to go on your own healing journey while creating this safe space for women. What has that experience been like for you in terms of your own healing and how that is changing the dynamics between you and your daughter?
Yeah, it's actually interesting you bring her up because she's, my daughter's 17 now, and she always talks about like how like she's seen me evolve. I wasn't always the best version of myself, especially when she was younger. When she was a baby, and I want to say up to like 5 years old, I had so much baby daddy drama, first of all, with that man. Bad, we always had so many issues, and I was very reactive back in the day. And I don't know if it's because I was young, because I think younger people can be reactive than older people, but like also I think it's just a lot of like I was angry. I was so angry at everybody. I was angry with my parents. I was angry with my baby daddy. I was angry with anybody that had done me wrong. And I would just like would lash out at anybody. I had a really bad attitude. People to the point where my own family didn't want to be around me. They're like, "Who are you? Who is this person? Why are you so mad? And why are you so mean?" And it was just my own defense mechanisms to keep myself safe. And it wasn't a healthy one. I did a lot of self-sabotage without even realizing I was self-sabotaging until I started and Rise and started learning about self-sabotage and like unhealthy coping skills. And I was like, oh my God, I've been on just everything's been unhealthy. And so really, again, like unlearning those things that I used to keep myself safe, which did help me for a long period of time, but now realizing I'm not in that position anymore. I need a better way. I need to do this in a healthier way and be able to express my emotions in a healthier way and things like that. So um my daughter definitely sees a difference in me for sure. So I think it's kind of cool for her to see me evolve, and I think it's gonna like rub off on her too and things like that. And sorry, I forgot what the other question was.
Well, no, I think that's beautiful. And but I'm just curious because I know I've done my own healing journey. It's messy, it's
Yeah,
shitty, it sucks,
yeah, it's
right? To
hard.
really look at, think about it, being able to say it, to the community, yeah, I was not a nice person. You and I have done the work to get to a place where there isn't judgment, but I imagine
Mhm.
that there was a lot of um conflicting emotions when you're trying to show up in service to these women, yet you're recognizing that who you are could be better and
Yeah,
figuring out how to get there without really knowing because there is no
yeah,
roadmap.
right. Yeah, and that's something that I realized early on. I was like, I can't be preaching to these women that they need to do A, B, and C when I haven't even done that myself. So everything that all the advice I give out if they ask for it, I always tell them I would never tell you guys to do something I haven't done myself. I'm not going to send you off, or I didn't just Google this, like I did this work, and yes, it's hard. And I'm very honest with them. I'm like, this stuff is not easy, like this stuff is deep, it's hard, and sometimes it feels like just the worst thing ever until you're finally past it. I was like, but you gotta feel it to heal it. You got to feel that discomfort. You got to sit with yourself, even when it sucks, even when you don't want to. Like, you just have to let it, let your body do whatever it's doing. Let those thoughts come in and things like that, no matter how uncomfortable. And that's how you move on. Because if we just keep pushing it down, and I call it stuffing it, you keep stuffing it and stuffing it and stuffing it. You can stuff it and it might be a good stuff that'll last for 20 years, 10 years, but guess what? That stuff's going to come back up eventually, somehow, whether it's emotional or physical. And I see this happen to a lot of ladies that are a little bit older too, like, or even younger, like, but like turning into physical things like, chronic
Manifestations. Yep.
pain, chronic illness. It's a huge problem. And people don't correlate trauma and that, because they just think, oh, but the body and mind are one. So I've learned that very, like, that you have to take care of your physical self. Yes, that's what we've been taught by society, physical, but they don't teach us the same thing about mental health. And it's one is just as important as the other, because, like, again, it's all intertwined. So if your physical health isn't doing good, then it'll affect your emotional, mental health, and vice versa. And people don't think about it that way. And it's so important.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny you say that. I did like a reel months back, and I said, listen, you can go to the Reiki healer and as many times as you want, but if you're not feeling your feelings, all you're doing is having to revisit your Reiki
Yeah.
healer because you're just repressing the negative energy.
Mm-hmm.
And furthermore, you're not taking away the beauty and the gifts that come from that experience because you're not allowing yourself to feel what's coming up for you around whatever situation you're faced with. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so incredibly powerful. And something I love about you, Jennifer, is that you do the work. I am of the same school of thought. There's never going to be anything that I encourage somebody else to try, do, or step into that I haven't already experienced and moved through, because that to me is really how you can bear witness and hold space for somebody while they're going through it. And anybody can read a book, but to gain that wisdom, you're only going to get it through the experiences that you're faced with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I also learned from some not so great counselors and therapists that I've had in the past. And I'm like, they clearly have not done any work on themselves. That's why they weren't able to help me. And that's why I really believe in, like, continuing to educate yourself, continuing to do work on yourself. That way you can help people the best way possible. Because I mean, anybody could sit there and preach, right, to do all these things, but if they're not doing it themselves, how can they really preach it? I mean, they can, but yeah.
Yeah, but you said something that is so true, and I experienced much of what you did. I've had therapists and psychiatrists who, you know, absolutely didn't do the work. And where I struggle with that is, if you're not helpful, you could actually be more harmful. And when you think about, going back to what you mentioned about like statistics, or I'll bring it to the point of labels, right? You could really harm somebody for the rest of their life if you project your mess out into their experience because
Mhm.
you're not doing the work. And so that to me is really profound as
Yeah.
well. You mentioned, your and Rise's mission is to help women become the best version of themselves. What does that mean for you? I'm curious. What does the best version of yourself mean?
Yeah. So I guess it's just whoever it is that you want to be, whatever makes you feel fulfilled and happy, because like I'd mentioned earlier, I wasn't always the best version of myself. And you could see it, like, physically, and just in the way that I acted. And I wasn't happy with myself. And you could see that in my actions, and I had really low self-esteem, like barely there. And I didn't think I was worth anything at one point in my life. And it showed. And now I think so highly of myself, not to the, I'm still very humble, but I know I'm like all the things that I've been through, all the things that I've overcome, like I think very highly of myself. And I think if most women thought that way, we would all be in a better place. But I also don't think it's all women's fault. I think society has a lot to do with it because society always tells women what we should be all the time. We see it when we're even driving on a billboard or in a magazine or on a Facebook ad or somebody, saying what we have to look like this and be this size and act like that and have that type of career, all these things of what we should be. I feel like that kind of messes with us when we're trying to figure out who we are, right? Especially when we're younger in our 20s or teens, right? Trying to figure out who am I, what type of life do I want to live and lead and things like that. And so now I'm very proud. I think I'm the ultimate version of myself today, but that doesn't mean that I won't be an even better version of myself tomorrow or in a year from now or 10 years from now. I think I'm just, like you mentioned earlier, I'm always evolving, so it is what you want it to be. So if you have this crazy dream of going to be an astronaut or going to be an entrepreneur or writing a book, like I always tell women, go do it. Go do it. There's a desire in your heart for a reason. It's not placed there for no reason, and it's there, and you keep thinking about it for a reason. So go do it. And don't let your fear stop you. I come from a family where all decisions are made based on fear, and I made most of my decisions in my life in the past based on fear, and I realized that was one of the cycles of my family. And I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. Like, I'm going to do it because it feels good or because this is what I want, not because I'm scared that I might not be good enough or I might not have enough money or I might not be qualified. All these things that, we stop ourselves from doing the things that our heart really desires, because of fear. And I just didn't want to do that anymore. So I think it's really important if you do have something that you want to do to just do it. And I think that's what helps you to become the ultimate version of yourself. Because if you're taking risks on yourself, right, when nobody else will, then you start to gain a little bit more of that self-love and you start to see yourself in a different light. And I think that's how you evolve into that ultimate version of yourself.
Yeah, that my true north for my ultimate version of myself is, am I joyful? Can I laugh? Can
Mhm.
I be present in the moment in deep, meaningful conversation? And that to me is the ultimate version of myself because, and maybe you experience this too. Oftentimes people think because we're coaches and we do the work that we have it all figured out and that we're not messy. And that
Yeah.
to me is could not be further than the truth, right? We're all messy. It's just that I'm I love my mess. Like I love myself even when I fall short. I love myself when I yell at my daughter or react. And that to me speaks to real self-love because perfection is not really real.
Yeah.
Um, and an ultimate version of yourself doesn't mean you have it all figured out. It's just you
Hmm.
trust in yourself enough to know that you will find the answers and it will figure itself out.
Yes. Yeah. And just, yeah, like you said, being confident in your decisions, right? Because back in the day when I was self-sabotaging, I was never sure because a part of me knew maybe it wasn't the best thing because I was very impulsive back then too. So I just do whatever felt good in the moment, N knowing that maybe the long-term consequence is going to be bad, but I just wanted that short-term fix.
Yep.
So now I think things through before I make decisions or before I respond, even when people piss me off. Like I want to just Jenny from the block wants to come out and be stupid and say something smart, but then I'm like, is that gonna help you? Is that the best thing to do? And I always tell people too, I think also being the best version of yourself is doing the right thing even when it's hard. Doing the right thing is so freaking hard, but I truly believe that the universe will pay you back for doing the right thing. It's just it comes full circle. And just like when you're not doing or the right thing, right? Like cheating on a test or something like that, that's going to come back on you too, some way, somehow. So I believe in karma and all that. And that's why I just believe like just doing it and then it'll come back for you in a better way.
Well, it's interesting because you mentioned karma, and for anybody listening on in your community or mine, something that you highlighted was fear. Well, fear operates from a really low energy. Like
Mm-hmm.
what you send out in the world when you operate in fear is really low vibrations. But
Mm-hmm.
when you operate from love, which is doing the right thing because you're ultimately operating from love for yourself and others, you send out more energy, more positive, powerful energy that, to your point, karma, cause and effect, comes back to you and you'll always be impacted by that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really, really beautiful. I want to ask you one more question. Um, how do you define fun in your life? And the reason I ask is I think that um having fun is instrumental in self-care and really living your best version of your life. And yet so often, and I'm sure you see this too, people don't incorporate fun in their day. And so
Mhm.
what is your take on fun and the role it plays in self-care?
Yeah. So I was telling you before we started recording that I went on my little self-care retreat this weekend. And it's mainly I go on these little weekend retreats just to be alone, honestly. And back in the day, I couldn't be alone. You couldn't pay me to be alone because I was very codependent on people. So now I really enjoy my alone time and just being in solitude. And in that time, I meditate, I journal. If the weather, is good, then I'll go for a walk. I really not now at this point, I like love being in nature. Before it was kind of like, whatever. Yeah, nice outside, no big deal. But like just seeing the trees and the leaves and like the animals, I don't know, the birds and the squirrels, just all that stuff just means so much more to me now. Like it's just, I don't know, when you really think about the world and how everything's like connected and how nature is here to be healing. I find it so healing to just like be outside and smell the fresh air, be in the sun, like and how therapeutic that really is to me. Another thing that I do is like I have a dog. I love playing with her. I you don't realize like how much just like playing with your animals like really brings like a lot of peace to you or just this playfulness, I guess. Um, Another thing I like to do too is like being with my kids and just talking crap to them and playing with them. Like I do that a lot and I really enjoy that. And obviously like vacationing is fun, hanging out with friends is fun, like being in my bed sometimes when I don't feel like doing anything, watching shows like is fun and just yeah, so it just depends, I guess, on my mood of like what you
Yeah.
consider fun. Listening to music, like I love Spanish music, reggaeton, salsa, bachata, merengue, like all that stuff really brings me joy. So sometimes when I'm just more in an uppity type of mood, like I'll put music on and I'll just dance around and dancing's fun too, and it burns calories.
I love that. So, well, yeah, I just think that it's so important that we as thought leaders, really, right, as people who are showing up and doing things differently, recognize that fun is part of that. It needs to be incorporated in our rhythms, our daily rhythms, so that way, the work that we are doing, right? Because the work you're doing alongside of other people as they go through their journeys and yours, right, can feel really arduous and hard. So if you're not incorporating fun, it can feel really daunting. And then you can get to places like, what is this all for? So,
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah. Is there anything that you would want to leave the community with that we haven't touched upon, or any parting thoughts you have?
Yeah, so I guess if anyone, is struggling with their mental health and really feeling like you're alone or really feeling like other people don't get it, or if I tell someone they're going to think I'm crazy or they're not going to understand and they're going to think my family's crazy or they're going to think my marriage is messed up. But like, I highly encourage you to go into a community, a safe place, right, where you can talk about these things with other people. And in our case, in Andri's, right, it's all women only. So like nobody's there to judge you. It really, really helps to just be in a safe space to talk about those things that maybe do bring you a lot of guilt and shame and things that you think you're going to be judged about. And finally, when you're in a space where you're not judged for those hard things that you're bringing up, it's so incredibly healing. And that's why I know you mentioned like being community is like really healing. And it truly is. And that's something I never would have thought of. Like, even when I started Andri's, I didn't even know like what was going to come out of this. But now just seeing so many women that come through and so hearing like their stories of like how much this has helped me to heal. Some of them are like counselors and therapists themselves, and they're like, it just helps to be in a place where like nobody's judging you and like you can speak freely without people being like, you know. sometimes
Yeah.
you're like that, but like, a lot of the times we've been through it ourselves, so we get it. So anyway, my whole point in saying that is, find mental health support, find a support group. We do work virtually with women all over the country, so you're more than welcome to come try it out. And we also don't obligate you to speak because sometimes women aren't ready to speak right away. Sometimes they want to go and just listen. And sometimes just hearing other people's stories it's really helpful, and then eventually they'll come and speak. And then sometimes they don't stop speaking because they're like so empowered to start talking. So yeah, so I would just say you're not alone in your struggle. Unfortunately, trauma and abuse is very common, more often than it should be. So if you're needing any type of resources or help, definitely feel free to reach out and we can help you. And if we don't have anything in our area for you, then we can try to find resources in your area. So
I love that so much, Jennifer. Thank you so, so much for your time and your energy. I really appreciate you and would love to talk offline on how I can support and rise. And if anybody is interested, I will have Jennifer's information in the bio. Please feel free to reach out. Again, if you guys are struggling, you want to reach out to people who are doing the work. It is so incredibly important that you recognize that you're worthy of being seen by somebody who's been there. So reach out. I'm here, Jennifer's here, and I really hope that you reach out and have a conversation with her. Thank you all so much, guys.
yeah.
Until next time. All right, I got to figure out how to hit end because I do this all the time.
Isn't in the
People, if
top
they,
top left kick corner, I thought.
yeah, it's at the bottom.